Good day or good evening. I'm Dick Fisher, and with me is my co-host, Ken Miller. The confusion of tongues at Babylon is a story that appears only in chapter 11 of Genesis. It is not referenced elsewhere in the Bible, and the event has no historical corroboration. The Babylonian creation myth, Enuma Elish, captures the mood of the tower builders in constructing an adjacent tower dedicated to Marduk. But as to the famous Tower of Babel, we have only the account in Genesis to guide us. We can establish that the Tower of Babel was constructed during the time frame that towers were being built all over Mesopotamia and Persia. Mud brick platforms likely were constructed initially to survive spring floods, but grew over time to become temples to honor and worship whatever pagan god they believed protected their city.
Counting the mud brick ziggurats in Mesopotamia can be done rather easily. Any number that exceeds 1 puts a kink in the traditional explanation that focuses on only one tower, as if no other tower was in existence.
The Atlas of Mesopotamia locates over 30 ziggurats and temple mounds in Mesopotamia, including some in Persia. French archaeologist André Perrault identified 33 towers in 27 different cities, adding, "It was sometimes possible for one city to have several ziggurats."
Had the population of the entire earth been bereft of humanity except for Noah's kin, clustered together in the land of Shinar, where the Tower of Babel was built, what would explain the additional towers?
The ziggurats at other sites either had to be constructed before, at the same time, or after the Tower of Babel. If the other monuments were constructed before the dispersion at Babel, it would mean Noah's descendants had already begun to spread out and settle in separated communities, precluding them from being at one place, which was the case according to Genesis 10. If constructed all at the same time, however, that would infer multiple Babels and simultaneous dispersions at all locations. Who would like to argue for that? But if the other ziggurats were built after Babel, it would mean that even though the Lord dispersed them, they gathered together again and built more ziggurats as though nothing had happened.
What we find is that building ziggurats was simply in vogue in those days. The Tower of Babel was one among a number of ziggurats constructed in cities throughout the region.
The traditional view that the world's population spoke one unified language after the flood, and that all present-day ethnic groups and languages commenced from Babel, can be further disproved from archaeological and linguistic evidence. Thousands of languages are spoken throughout the world, of which between 50 and 200 are unrelated stocks. As of January 15, 2007, Wycliffe Bible translators counted 6,912 languages spoken in the world. By contrast, recovered inscriptions in Akkadian, Canaanite, Ugarit, Assyrian, Aramaic, and Amorite languages, as well as later Hebrew, can all be traced back to Noah's children, named in Genesis 10. All are quite similar and closely related Semitic languages. On the other hand, many languages spoken in various corners of the world arose independently, even though certain loan words have been swapped around due to global migrations. Languages traceable to Noah's descendants, though, are from the same basic language tree.
Ebla, an ancient Canaanite city, dates to about 3000 BC, according to archaeologists. This early date suggests the Canaanites took over an existing city that had already been established by previous occupants, just as Asher took over the pre-existing city of Nineveh.
Texts recovered from Ebla show obvious similarities with the system of writing at Shuruppak, modern Farah, and Abu Salbalik. The language belongs to an archaic phase of the Northwest Semitic languages, which include Ugaritic of 1400 to 1200 BC, Phoenician, and Biblical Hebrew. The Canaanites spoke a language within the same basic language group that other descendant nations did. Sumerian loanwords were also incorporated into Canaanite texts.
In the second half of the 3rd millennium BC, Sargon came to power. One of the key factors giving Sargon's rule such historical punctuation was that the inscriptions beginning with his reign what had previously been an unofficial language, a Semitic language.
A shift to an Akkadian tongue after centuries of Sumerian inscriptions was a point of real intrigue for archaeologists. Sumerian was gradually replaced in Mesopotamian official documents by Semitic Akkadian, though Sumerian was retained in the temples.
Note that two distinctly different cultures, Semite and Sumerian, speaking unrelated languages, were together in the same region at the same time. Not only were there different languages spoken in the world, but different languages were spoken in Shinar prior to the Tower of Babel incident, and even before Noah's flood, as both Sumer and Akkad can be traced to about 4000 BC.
Although many modern Indo-European languages contain a few elements in common with Hebrew, there is no known language that can be traced to Sumerian. Quoting Ancient Empires, Milestones of History, the Sumerian language is quite different in structure and vocabulary from any other known language of the ancient world, and attempts to derive the Sumerians from an original home in the Caucasus Mountains or from the Iranian plateau on linguistic grounds have so far failed.
When Asher discovered Nineveh, see Genesis 10:11 in the King James Version, he did not start from scratch on virgin soil. Although the excavations at the city of Asher only hint at previous habitation, the underlying ruins beneath Nineveh revealed levels of occupation that preceded the arrival of the Assyrians by roughly 1,000 years.
The artifacts recovered at Nineveh were related to the pre-flood Ubaid or Halafian cultures, not to the Semites or Sumerian peoples. Quoting from Ancient Empires, Milestones of History, the comparison suggests that the early population of Assyria was more or less identical with the pre-Sumerian population of southern Babylonia. The absence of any remains corresponding to the so-called early dynastic period of Babylonia makes it clear, on the other hand, that the Sumerians never occupied Assyria.
Pottery and artifacts dating to the pre-flood period at Nineveh comprise an unmistakable body of evidence of a pre-existing populated site upon which Asher could build a city. But the testimony runs deeper than that. Cuneiform writing found at the site reveals the city was called Ninua, even before the Semites arrived.